The wind howled across the icy cliffs, carrying flakes of snow that sparkled in the pale sunlight. At the very edge of the volcanic sanctuary, 5 albino dragon hatchlings tumbled over each other, their soft scales glinting like frozen pearls. Their mother, Empress Silvara, watched from above, her tall, regal form framed against the dark cliffs. Her eyes were sharp, filled with pride and a touch of impatience. She expected perfect loyalty from her brood as always. The hatchlings chirped and hissed, nudging one another in playful curiosity. Empress Silvara's voice rang out like ice breaking. "Stay close. Do not wander. You belong to me and only me." Her words were firm, commanding, but the hatchlings paid her little mind. Their attention was suddenly drawn to a small figure at the edge of the cliff. It was a human child, no more than 8 years old, with hair the color of wheat and eyes as bright as the winter sky. He looked small and fragile next to the massive dragons, yet he walked with a strange confidence, unafraid of the enormous creatures surrounding him. His steps were careful but steady, and he carried no weapon, no shield, nothing but his small pack of belongings and an open heart. The albino hatchlings froze for a moment, tilting their heads. One of them, the smallest and most curious, stepped forward. The snow sparkled on its scales and it sniffed the air, letting out a soft, questioning hiss. The child smiled gently, crouching down to meet it eye to eye. "Hello," he whispered. "I won't hurt you. I promise." Empress Silvara's eyes widened in disbelief. How dare a human approach her precious brood? "Get away from them," she commanded, her voice echoing over the cliffs. But the hatchlings did not move. Instead, the smallest one nudged closer, sniffing the child's outstretched hand. He didn't pull away. Instead, he laughed softly, a sound full of warmth that seemed to ripple through the cold air. "See? I'm not dangerous," he said. He reached out slowly, letting the dragon touch his fingers. The dragon's scales were smooth and warm under his hand. For the first time, it purred, a deep, vibrating sound that surprised the child and made the other hatchlings tilt their heads in curiosity. Empress Silvara's chest tightened. This was impossible. No human could earn the trust of her dragons. They had always obeyed her commands without question, responding only to her will. And yet here they were, ignoring her. The human child had done something she could not. He had reached a part of them she never could. One by one the hatchlings approached. They sniffed his clothes, nudged his legs, and even nuzzled his cheeks. The child laughed, his voice bright and clear in the icy air. "You like me, don't you?" he said softly. He held out both hands and the hatchlings pressed against him, their tiny claws careful not to hurt him. The Empress's face darkened. She stepped closer, her presence tall and commanding. "Enough," she demanded. "You will obey me, not him." But the hatchlings didn't flinch. Instead, they let out soft chirps, almost as if they were protesting. One of them even lifted its head and hissed softly at her, a sound that sent a chill down her spine. The human child looked up at the towering Empress and smiled. "Don't be afraid," he said gently. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to be your friend too." His words were simple, but there was a calm power in them. He did not demand or threaten. He only offered kindness. The albino hatchlings, sensing the sincerity in his voice, pressed even closer. They curled around him protectively, their scales glinting in the sunlight. The Empress stepped back, shocked. Her brood, the creature she had raised and controlled, had chosen someone else. A human. The wind whipped across the cliffs, carrying the sound of the hatchlings' soft hisses and the child's laughter. For a moment, the Empress simply watched, unable to move, unable to command. The connection between the human and the dragons was strong, something she had never seen before. It was not obedience. It was something deeper: trust, affection, and a bond that could not be broken by fear or pride. The child leaned down, placing his forehead against the smallest hatchling's snout. "You're not alone," he whispered. "I'll take care of you." The dragon blinked slowly, tilting its head, and let out a soft, almost musical chirp. Empress Silvara's heart tightened. How could this be happening? Her brood, her pride, her control, everything she had known about loyalty was being challenged by a small, fragile human. She wanted to roar, to command, to reclaim them, but she could not. The dragon's choice was clear. They had chosen him, and for the first time she felt the sting of jealousy and awe all at once. High above the cliffs, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light over the child and the albino hatchlings. The wind carried their sounds, soft hisses, gentle laughter, and the echo of something new, something impossible. The Empress watched silently, her mind racing. She could not believe it. And yet, she knew, This human child had arrived and everything was about to change. The wind had settled a little by the next morning, leaving the sanctuary quiet except for the soft crunch of snow beneath tiny claws. The albino hatchlings were restless, circling the human child as he sat on a flat rock, carefully unpacking the small bundle he carried. He had brought a piece of dried meat and a few scraps of bread, which he offered slowly, letting the hatchlings sniff and taste at their own pace. Empress Silvara watched from her perch above, her arms crossed tightly. She had not slept well. The thought of her brood favoring a human over her rankled her pride. She could feel the whispers of the court in her mind, how a human could be daring enough, how her control was slipping. She flexed her fingers in irritation. "This is absurd," she muttered. "No human could hold sway over my dragons. It is impossible." But the dragons ignored her. The smallest one leaned its snout against the child's shoulder, and another brushed its head against his leg. Kai, the human child, laughed softly, scratching behind the ear of the smallest hatchling. "You like that, don't you?" he said. "You're gentle, just like I promised." The hatchlings chirped happily, their wings fluttering in excitement. Kai looked up and smiled at Empress Silvara, who was trying to hide behind a curtain of frost and pride. "See," he said softly. "I don't want to take your place. I just want to be your friend." The Empress's heart clenched. She had never been ignored by her brood before. She had commanded, loved, and nurtured them since they hatched. Yet here, a small human was able to offer something she had never considered: quiet kindness, patience, and understanding. Kai began talking to the hatchlings in a gentle rhythm, a soft hum mixed with words they could somehow understand. The dragons tilted their heads, listening closely. One by one they began to mirror his gestures, flapping their wings slowly, curling closer, chirping softly. They were not just curious, they were learning from him, responding to his tone and mood. Empress Silvara's lips tightened. She tried to command them. "Return to me. Now." Her voice rang clear, sharp as ice. But the hatchlings only glanced at her, then back to Kai as if testing which voice mattered more. The smallest hatchling let out a soft hiss, almost like a warning. The others echoed it, forming a protective circle around the human child. Kai tilted his head, looking at the Empress calmly. "I don't want to fight with you," he said softly. "I just want to help." He extended his hand to one of the larger hatchlings, who sniffed it carefully before nudging it gently with its snout. The bond was growing stronger, and it was visible, each dragon leaning into Kai's presence as if he belonged with them naturally. The Empress felt a rush of emotions: pride, fear, and an unfamiliar sting of jealousy. She had expected obedience, not affection. The dragons were supposed to see her as the center of their world. Instead, they were drawn to this tiny, fragile human like moths to a gentle flame. She stepped closer, her presence towering and majestic. "This human has no right to be here," she said, her voice firm but slightly shaken. "He is not of our world. He is small, weak, and insignificant." But the dragons chirped again, nudging Kai protectively, ignoring her completely. The child laughed softly, brushing snow off one of the hatchling's wings. "I don't feel weak," he said. "I feel like I belong." The words were simple, but they carried warmth and certainty. The hatchlings pressed closer to him, wrapping around his legs, their tiny wings brushing against each other. They were not afraid, they were comforted. One of the larger hatchlings stepped forward, placing its head on Kai's shoulder. He held it gently, whispering encouragement. "It's okay. You're safe with me," he said. The dragon purred, a deep, vibrating sound that resonated through the snow and rock. The Empress had never heard anything like it. Her brood had never purred like that for anyone before. The court members, who had arrived silently at the edges of the cliffs, whispered among themselves. "The child has a way with them," one said quietly. "They respond to his kindness, not her commands." Empress Silvara's chest tightened. She clenched her fists, but she could not break the scene before her. The human child was patient, gentle, and fearless in a way she had never taught her dragons. He had earned their trust, not demanded it. And they had chosen him. Kai looked up at the Empress and smiled again. "I don't want to take your place," he said softly. "I just want to be your friend too." There was no fear in his eyes, no challenge, only honesty. The dragons seemed to understand this. They leaned closer, nudging each other and him, creating a circle of trust and warmth that even the cold wind could not touch. The Empress took a step back, her mind spinning. She had always believed that loyalty could be commanded, that love could be earned through care and discipline alone. But here was proof that true loyalty was something different. It could not be demanded. It could only be earned through kindness, courage, and understanding. The sun climbed higher, melting frost and casting light over the child and the dragons. The wind carried their soft hisses and laughter across the cliffs. Empress Silvara's pride ached, but somewhere beneath it, a spark of admiration grew. The human child had arrived, and not only had he survived the dragon's curiosity, he had captured their hearts. And for the first time, the Empress realized that her world was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. The albino hatchlings chirped again, nudging Kai's hands and wings, wrapping around him as though to say, "You belong here." The Empress watched silently, the icy wind cutting across her face, and for the first time she understood. This child was no ordinary human. Empress Silvara paced back and forth along the icy cliffs, her long robes trailing through the snow. The sight of her albino hatchlings clinging to the small human child made her chest tighten with a mix of anger and disbelief. She had always been the center of their world. They obeyed her without question, their loyalty unquestionable. And now a human dared to take that place in their hearts. Kai, the human child, sat quietly on a smooth stone, watching the hatchlings playfully chase one another and tumble against him. He laughed softly, a sound bright enough to cut through the Empress's fury. "Careful now," he said, brushing snow off one of the hatchlings' wings. "Don't hurt each other. We have to stay safe." The dragons responded to his words immediately, adjusting their movements as if they truly understood him. Empress Silvara's fingers curled into fists. She stepped closer, her towering figure casting a shadow over the group. "Enough," she demanded. "You will obey me. Not this human." The hatchlings froze for a moment, looking at her with wide, curious eyes. Then one by one they turned back to Kai, nudging him with their snouts, pressing their tiny claws against his legs. The largest hatchling let out a soft hiss, a warning to the Empress that this child was under their protection. The Empress felt a sting of fear alongside her anger. Never before had her dragons defied her. The court had arrived quietly, their whispers carried on the wind. "It is unheard of," one noble murmured. "The dragons favor a human over the Empress herself." Another added, "The child has some strange power, or perhaps it is charm." Silvara's pride burned. She had nurtured her dragons from the moment they hatched. She had taught them to hunt, to fly, to obey. She had given them everything, and yet here they were, ignoring her commands. She took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "Bring him to me," she ordered, her voice firmer. "I will remind him who rules here." But Kai didn't move. He simply smiled up at her, calm and fearless. "I won't fight you," he said softly. "I just want to help." His words were honest, gentle, and somehow full of strength. The hatchlings chirped and nudged him closer, shielding him from her presence. It was as if they understood that he posed no threat, only safety. The Empress's heart raced. She had expected defiance, begging, or even fear from this tiny human. Instead, she found confidence and kindness. It made her blood boil even more. She turned to the court. "What do you see? A weak human controlling my brood? This is unacceptable." One of the older nobles spoke cautiously. "Your Majesty, the child does not force the dragons. He calms them. They respond to him because of his care, not because he commands them." Silvara's jaw tightened. She had never considered that loyalty could be given freely, that respect could be earned without fear or punishment. It was a foreign concept, and yet here it was playing out before her eyes. Meanwhile, Kai continued to speak softly to the hatchlings. He reached out, running a hand along the scales of the smallest one. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here with you. You don't need to be afraid." The dragon leaned against him, resting its head on his shoulder, letting out a soft, vibrating purr. The Empress watched, unable to move. The dragons were responding to this human in ways she had never seen before. They listened to his voice, mirrored his gestures, and even showed affection. She had spent years training them, yet none of her lessons could touch their hearts as this child's simple kindness had. Suddenly, one of the hatchlings squealed, alerting everyone to a movement in the distance. A pack of predators had crept up the cliffs, drawn by the scent of the dragons. The court froze, but the dragons reacted instantly. They looked at Kai, not the Empress. Kai's eyes widened, but he did not panic. He raised his hands, calling softly to them. "Fly up. Get to safety. Protect everyone." The hatchlings obeyed immediately, flapping their wings with surprising strength. They gathered the smaller dragons and even nudged the court members back, shielding them from danger. Empress Silvara watched in disbelief as her brood followed the humans' lead without hesitation. Her mind raced. The child's bond with the dragons was more than affection. It was trust, understanding, and instinctive connection. And in that moment, Silvara realized her pride had blinded her. She had thought that fear and respect were enough to command loyalty. But true loyalty came from care, courage, and empathy. The predators hesitated, unsure against the united dragons, and eventually retreated. The wind carried the dragon's victorious chirps and the human child's calm laughter across the cliffs. Empress Silvara felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, awe, and an undeniable admiration for the small human who had just saved her brood and her court without a weapon, without force, simply through trust and guidance. She stepped back, her hands trembling slightly. She could no longer deny it. Her dragons had chosen him. Not out of weakness, not out of fear, but out of love and respect. And for the first time, she understood that the world she had ruled with pride and power was changing. Kai looked up at her, still calm, still kind. "It's okay," he said softly. "I just want to help. That's all." The dragons huddled closer, their scales gleaming in the sunlight, protective yet affectionate. Empress Silvara's chest ached with the weight of pride and humility. She had been challenged, and the outcome was clear. This human, small and fragile though he appeared, had won the hearts of her dragons. And perhaps, she realized, there was more to loyalty than she had ever understood. The wind swept across the cliffs, carrying the sounds of laughter, soft hisses, and the quiet hum of something extraordinary, a bond between human and dragons that could not be broken. And for the first time in her life, the Empress felt something she had never truly known: awe. The snow had melted slightly, leaving patches of black volcanic rock exposed. The sanctuary was quiet, but tension hung in the air. Empress Silvara watched from a high cliff, her arms folded tightly, her face pale with worry. She had expected that after yesterday's events, the human child might falter. But Kai had not only survived, he had commanded the dragons with a calm confidence that left her uneasy. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the cliffs. Empress Silvara's sharp eyes widened. Smoke and molten rock were spilling from one of the smaller volcanoes nearby. A sudden eruption was beginning, spewing fire and ash toward the sanctuary. Panic rippled through the court. The albino hatchlings shrieked, circling the child, their wings beating rapidly in fear and confusion. Kai's eyes darted to the dragons. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Stay calm," he said softly. "I'll guide you." His voice carried no command, only confidence and reassurance. The hatchlings responded instantly, circling closer, leaning on his presence as if drawing strength from him. Empress Silvara's heart raced. She wanted to act, to lead, but every instinct told her that her dragons would ignore her voice. And they did. They looked only at Kai. Their bond with him had become stronger than their fear, stronger than the Empress's authority. Kai rose to his feet and pointed toward a safer plateau above the cliffs. "This way. Quick, follow me." His hands waved gently, guiding them without force, and the hatchlings obeyed immediately. One by one, they lifted the smaller dragons and nudged the frightened court members toward safety. Empress Silvara's chest tightened. She had trained these creatures her entire life, yet it was this fragile human who was leading them. She realized that the dragons were not blindly following, they were responding to trust, empathy, and courage. They knew he would keep them safe. The eruption grew stronger. Lava began to flow down the slopes, hissing as it met the snow. Rocks tumbled, and a gust of wind carried burning ash toward the sanctuary. Panic threatened to take hold among the court members, but the dragons formed a protective barrier around Kai, flapping their wings and nudging everyone toward the safe plateau. Kai's voice remained calm. "Step over here carefully. Don't run. Stay close to the dragons." Each word was measured, precise, and somehow comforting. The albino hatchlings mirrored his movements, guiding the others, using their small bodies to push those who hesitated toward safety. One of the larger dragons hissed at a falling rock, but Kai's hand rested gently on its head. "It's okay. You can do this," he said. The dragon shivered, then flapped its wings to create a gust of wind that deflected the rock, saving a nearby courtier. Empress Silvara's pride warred with a growing sense of awe. She could no longer deny it. This human child had earned the dragon's complete trust. Her brood had chosen him not because he was stronger, but because he understood them, calmed them, and guided them with courage. She swallowed hard, feeling her own fear and pride mix in a bitter knot. Kai noticed a young hatchling struggling to lift off, its wings weak. Without hesitation he knelt, holding it carefully. "You can fly," he whispered. "I'll help you." With his gentle guidance, the hatchling flapped its wings, catching the air currents, and lifted safely toward the plateau. The other dragons circled protectively, cheering it on with soft chirps. The Empress took a step forward, instinctively wanting to intervene, but the lava surged closer. She realized that if she tried to take command, she might cause more chaos. Instead, she watched silently as Kai coordinated the evacuation with precision, guiding dragons and humans alike to safety. By the time the eruption slowed, everyone was safe. The albino hatchlings perched around Kai, their scales glowing in the sunlight that pierced through the ash. Their tiny claws rested on his shoulders and arms, their heads nuzzling him as if to say, "You saved us. You are one of us now." The court stared in astonishment, murmuring among themselves. No human had ever done anything like this. No human had ever commanded dragons without fear, without force, and yet here they were, completely obedient, completely loyal to the child. Empress Silvara finally approached, her tall figure casting a long shadow over the plateau. She studied Kai, who stood surrounded by her dragons, calm, smiling, and unafraid. Her heart ached with the weight of pride and humility. She had always believed that authority came from strength and command. But this child had shown her that true respect came from courage, care, and empathy. "Kai," she said, her voice quieter than usual, almost unsure. You have done what I could not. You have earned their trust." She paused, looking at her albino hatchlings who chirped softly in response, still close to him. Kai nodded gently. "I didn't do it to be praised," he said. "I just wanted to help. That's all." His eyes were steady, honest, and unafraid. The Empress felt her pride soften. For the first time, she understood that loyalty could not be demanded. It had to be given freely, earned through care and courage. Her brood had chosen him, yes, but it had not weakened her. Instead, it had shown her a new kind of strength, one she had never considered. The albino hatchlings nuzzled Kai one last time before flapping their wings and circling the plateau. They had proven themselves brave, but their trust in the child was undeniable. Empress Silvara watched them, and slowly, a small, reluctant smile appeared on her face. Kai looked around at her, his expression calm and kind. "We can all be safe together," he said. "If we trust each other." The dragons chirped in agreement, their wings brushing the wind, and even the Empress could not deny the truth in his words. For the first time, the Empress felt a new kind of pride, not in power or control, but in the courage and humanity of someone smaller, weaker, yet stronger in ways she had never understood. The wind carried the sound of laughter, soft dragon hisses, and the quiet hum of something extraordinary, a bond between human and dragons that could protect them all. The sanctuary was quiet now. Smoke and ash from the eruption had drifted away, leaving the cliffs bathed in soft sunlight. The albino hatchlings perched around Kai, their scales gleaming in the light, still leaning against him as if refusing to leave his side. The child had led them through danger and uncertainty, and now the bond between them was unbreakable. Empress Silvara approached slowly, her heavy robes brushing the rocky ground. She had watched everything from a distance, felt every heartbeat, and now she felt a strange mix of awe and humility. Her brood, the dragons she had nurtured and commanded since their hatching, had chosen the human over her. And yet, she could not bring herself to be angry. Not completely. Kai looked up and smiled softly when he saw her. "You don't need to be afraid," he said gently. "I just want everyone to be safe." His voice was calm and honest, carrying no arrogance, only kindness. The dragons chirped in agreement, nudging him protectively, their wings fluttering softly. The Empress studied him carefully. Every instinct in her body told her to assert control, to demand obedience. But the events of the past days had shown her a truth she could not ignore. Loyalty could not be commanded. It could only be earned through courage, care, and understanding. And this child had earned it in a way she never could. "You have done something remarkable," she said finally, her voice steady but quiet. "My dragons, they listen to you. They trust you. They care for you." She gestured toward the albino hatchlings, who chirped and nudged Kai again, pressing close to him. Kai shook his head gently. "I didn't do it for praise," he said. "I just wanted to help. That's all. They were scared, so I helped them. They were confused, so I stayed calm. I didn't try to control them. I just cared." The Empress frowned slightly, her pride warring with her admiration. She had spent her life controlling her brood, believing that authority was all that mattered. But here was proof that her way was not the only way. The dragons had followed her because they feared her. They had followed Kai because they loved him. She took another step closer, her eyes meeting Kai's. "I see now that I was wrong," she said. "I believed that strength and command were enough. But they were not. You have shown me another kind of strength, one that I never understood." Kai smiled, a small warm smile that seemed to calm even the Empress's stormy heart. "Strength can come in many ways," he said softly. "Sometimes it's not about being bigger or stronger. Sometimes it's about being brave enough to care." The albino hatchlings chirped softly, circling around him. They nudged him and pressed their heads against him as if to confirm their loyalty. Empress Silvara watched, her pride slowly melting into something softer. For the first time she saw loyalty not as a tool but as a gift, freely given. One by one the hatchlings flew gently toward her, nuzzling her hands and shoulders. She stiffened at first, unsure how to react. But Kai reached out, his hand resting lightly on her arm. "It's okay," he said. "They still love you. You just have to understand them differently now." The Empress felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She knelt slightly, meeting the child's gaze directly. I understand now," she said. "I see that true respect, true loyalty cannot be forced. It must be earned. And you have earned it." Kai nodded. "We can all work together," he said. "Dragons, humans, everyone. If we trust each other, we can be stronger than we ever imagined." The Empress smiled finally. It was small, hesitant, but genuine. She looked at her brood, circling and chirping around Kai, and then at Kai himself. Perhaps there is more to this world than I knew," she said softly. "Perhaps humans are not as fragile or weak as I once believed." The albino hatchlings chirped in agreement, nudging both Kai and the Empress. It was a symbol of unity, of trust, and of a bond that had been tested by fear and danger and had come out stronger. The court members whispered among themselves, marveling at the sight of the human child standing confidently among dragons and royalty alike. Kai reached out his hand to the Empress. "We can be friends," he said simply. "We can all learn from each other." The Empress hesitated for a moment, then took it, her hand surprisingly small in his, and nodded. The dragons chirped and flapped their wings as if celebrating the moment. Their bond with Kai had never been stronger, and now a new bond had formed, with the Empress as well. She felt pride not in control but in understanding. She had been challenged and she had learned something she never expected: humans could be extraordinary. High above the cliffs, the sun shone down on them, casting long shadows of dragons and human alike. The wind carried the soft sounds of hisses, laughter, and the quiet hum of something extraordinary. A bond had been forged not through fear but through courage, kindness, and empathy. And as Empress Silvara watched the human child and her albino hatchlings together, she realized the truth she could no longer deny. Sometimes the smallest, most unexpected beings can show the greatest strength. For the first time in her life she felt true respect, for a human, for her dragons, and for the power of care over command. The albino hatchlings nestled around Kai once more, and the Empress stepped back, smiling softly. The world had changed and she knew that together they could face anything,